Hey, what's up, builders? It's your girl, Kantoinette the blogger, and you are now listening to the LBF Podcast. With me today is Rick of the previous Rick and Namon show. He took it away from us, guys. Go ahead and say something and explain yourself to the
Um,
builders.
I think the thing is, if you listen to that last episode, you kind of understand it. It's
Mhm.
not a forever, ever type of thing, but one day it might come back in some form or another. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But y'all know that voice. Rick has been on several of the LBF episodes. You were on Friend Zoned. You were on the Earn It episode, which is always a favorite. And it was another one we
Wasn't it?
did. The Burnout was a good one. That
Yep,
was
that,
a really, really good one. I listen to that whenever I am actually getting back in burnout.
yeah, that one was a good one.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been more, but I know you've been on my show, our Rick and Namon, at least 3 or 4 times. One,
I think it
two.
was three. Is it that first time and then
Yes,
like
the
two
four of us
more?
did it. Like me, you, Namon, and Kendra did it twice.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
we did it 3 times.
It was twice,
Because
I
we
think.
recorded back to back and then we recorded another day.
You might be right.
So it might be more. It's 4 or 5, something like that. We familiar with each other.
Right. So even though the current episodes of the Rick and Namon show are not, they've already let the show go, you can still find those episodes and go back and listen and get all the great information and conversations that they have there. So make sure you check that out on all your streaming platforms.
Thank you. Yeah, they're definitely still there. Definitely keeping them up
Hmm.
so people can listen to them.
Yes. Um, so today we're going to be doing a dating 102. So if you are familiar with LBF Podcast, we did a dating 101 on season one, I think. And that was a fun episode, but you actually posed this question to me.
Mhm.
And you said, what are some things that look good on paper, but basically those things aren't actually good when you're starting to date someone? So it really made me think, and I shared this question on my social media and we got a lot of good
You did.
responses.
You got a
Yeah.
lot of good responses.
A lot of good responses, a lot of good feedback. People were actually like on this topic, and I was just like, well, dang.
I didn't expect it to go like that. I was like, wow, all right, look at that.
Yeah, but it was great because it made me think too. So we're gonna just run down the list and discuss that, and then we'll also, when we get to a specific one, we'll plug in what the builders had to say about that too.
Yeah, I feel like that thing can kind of go a couple of ways. That question, because it's like I've been thinking about what some of the responses have been, and
Hmm.
thinking about some of my thoughts, and it's just kind of crazy because I feel like a lot of times you can meet someone that's wonderful, and you guys have some kind of
Hmm.
connection. It might just be a physical connection, and you could look at that person, and you can know that person and analyze it and say, "This is cool." But
Hmm.
this will
Hmm.
last. This will be a hot flame that will burn out.
Right. You kind of already size someone up and how they're going to be able to like have that longevity or not in your life. And also like what they're going to be able to contribute based on like what you really want. And
Yeah.
sometimes people are just good for the moment. And you can tell that based off of those, like, a lot of times you tell that based off of that realization that even though they might have all the stuff on paper, and when we say on paper, I mean like first impressions, right? You got the first date, the first couple of weeks, everything seems really good. The person is, showing up the way that you think that you want them to show up, and they have all the things that you think you want. And then when you dig deeper, you realize like, oh, this person is not going to be able to withstand.
Hey, this ain't it like I
This
thought.
ain't it. Actually, you know what? Before we get into like the actual ones, like, do you have something that you feel like either now or previously looked good on paper, but when it came to practice, like you weren't so great at?
Like something of me.
Yeah.
I think it's something that I've seen in other and the women that I've dated. I can think of one in particular, but I'm very attentive, And sometimes that attentiveness can be a little bit much if you're not prepared for it,
Mm,
because it's kind of like I'm either not in or I'm all in.
mm. I like
If
that.
you're not, and it's like if you're not in the headspace that I'm in, because now part of the way the question came about is because women that I would have dated previously, and we would have had a good 6 month run, year run, maybe like a little bit longer. I'm kind of like not even down to do that now because I'm looking for something that's gonna last a lot longer than just a couple fun years. I want
Right.
something that's gonna be forever, and I can't waste 2 years because that's interfering with me finding the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Right. And that's real. I mean, this conversation, as fun as it will be, is also it helps you realize like you can't just take things at that first impression and you can't just go off of a very small piece of knowing someone. And then when you get mature and you realize your own patterns when it comes to dating, you get better at realizing like, okay, even though this person looks all great, like I just know that in practice this isn't going to work for what I want.
Yeah,
And
I feel
so
like it's a level of maturity too.
it has to
It's
be.
like an awakening.
Mhm. I mean, because if I mean, some people, choose not to have that awakening. Some people just go throughout and date like they still 17. But you're supposed to mature in how you choose people, and how you allow them to show up in your life too. So
Yeah, I don't think everybody ever. I don't think people ever necessarily get aware, and some people are just happy where they're at. Like I have uncles. I
mhm.
have uncles that are in their 50s and they still dating like 20-year-olds, and it's like, yo, like this is what we really doing right now. We just going
Ain't that called a midlife crisis or something?
past that. It's just some people just never want the same things, and
Yeah.
so I remember I was having a conversation with some people, some older men, and they were talking about the game. It's like, I have all these girls, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yo, that just sounds so unappealing to me. That is not something like, yo, like you're getting old. Like, who was going to be there with you on Sunday nights and
Hmm.
Monday mornings? Like, who was really you? It's just, it feels very shallow to rotate women or people for that matter in and out of your life. Like, I just want somebody who I know is for me and that I don't have to worry about, like just somebody
Yeah.
that I know has my back, somebody I have their back 100%. And I feel like when you have that, times that I've had that, it might have been temporary, but it's a beautiful thing to have. And I can't imagine any temporary flings filling that void because that's
Right.
what to feel.
And I mean, I'm not going to discount the experience people have with, having temporary people because sometimes, like you said, we want different things. They
Yeah.
might not want that, in depth connection because they feel like they don't have the time, the energy to give to it because it is a mutual thing. Whenever you expect someone to pour into you, you're supposed to be understanding that you're going to have to give that stuff back in return. So if somebody is choosing not to partake in that experience, I can't say that, I'm a judge them for it. Not saying that's what you're doing, but I do for me and mine. I do want something that if I get sick, I want somebody that's going to care enough to come check on me. I want someone who is going to be able to have that longevity, so that I don't know, it's that stability and that comfort, and I get that too. Part of being able to get to that point though is realizing these patterns, and sometimes people put their best foot forward. And then you start like walking along on a journey with them and you realize like, oh, you really ain't got it together as much as I thought you had it together. So
They hide their crazy
um
real well.
huh
I said they hide their crazy real well.
yeah. So I, because I didn't share mine, I'll share mine. I think that I have a few.
You got a few.
I have a few.
Tell us,
So
me and the builders are listening.
right. So of course I always talk about it. So it's the good girl. That was the title that I donned. That looks good on paper, but in practice, I didn't really have no person. I had a personality I knew about, but I wasn't allowing myself to be seen by other people because I was performing. And so that was something that worked against the relationship because I wasn't being my own person, if that makes sense.
It does.
And
It-
also,
By the way, it was a very good article.
oh, thank you. Yeah.
And Dev to the was a good guy.
Death to the Good Girl was the article. Death to the Good Guy. I did write Death to the Good Guy too.
I
Yeah.
read both. Like both of them were really well written, and I could see myself in Death to the Good Guy. Like I definitely saw your point of view, even though when you were writing, and I was like, I don't know if I agree with that or not. But we talked about it when I read it, and I was like, all right, you changed my mind a little bit.
But sometimes if I don't, like, it's never when I have a conversation that I feel like I want to try to persuade people. But if they're not persuaded, that doesn't, at least I made you think. You know what I'm saying? At least I made you like, okay, I don't agree with her and this is why, you
Yeah.
know? So that's always cool with me. But yeah, so that, and then also kind of what you said too, like, I'm a very passionate person. Sometimes I can be a little bit too intense.
You?
And mhm. What? Wait, why is this surprising?
It was a joke.
Oh,
You're sarcastic. That was a sarcastic you.
the inflection didn't,
Sorry.
whatever.
You? Is that better?
Anyway, but yeah, sometimes I can be, and like you said, if the person isn't prepared for it, I know well enough now to let people know, like, hey, I'm intense. But yeah, so that's something that usually looks good on paper. People want you to be all about them until you're all about them.
24/7, and
Uh-huh.
I was listening to Afro Latina. She's talking about how people always want a spicy Latino woman, and she's like, "You want a spicy Latino woman until I'm spicy 3 months into the relationship still," and you're like, "Can I put you on? Can I put an off switch over here?"
Listen, and that's another one too, because everybody wants a woman who is, on the other side of that, I'm gonna put like sexual, right? So that's part of it too, like sexual differences. Looks good on paper, right? Until you get that woman that actually has a good sex drive.
You'd be tired.
And now you tired. Now you want her off of you. Now you trying to sleep. She don't care about that.
It's like that.
So
It's that meme. It's like every dude thinks they want a woman with a high sex drive until they find a woman with a high sex drive.
this is so true. As a woman with a high sex drive, I can vouch for that meme because I'm just like, I don't care. You knew what it was before. I have no care about what you feel right now.
You
Tired, headache, you can pop a
ain't
Motrin.
headache. I mean, sex supposed to help with the headache, so that's never a good excuse, people.
Sometimes if you have a really bad headache, though, I've had a really bad one. Anyway, I'm sorry, we veered off. All
Yeah,
right,
this is health
so
and sex advice too, people.
huh?
So this is health and sex advice as well. So
Health and sex advice.
there it is. You listen to Kantoinette on that one.
No, I don't know everything.
No, you just know what you know, and you have a interesting perspective on life.
Yeah, I
That's what
try.
makes your show so beautiful because you're giving your perspective based on the experiences that you've had.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's all we can do.
that's it.
So let's jump into this first one. Dating 101, what looks good on paper, but is it good while dating? The one with degrees and certifications. So the example that the builder gave for this is that a lot of people will think that because they have a degree or certain levels of education that they are automatically like intellectual and cultured, and they kind of just miss the point of like your degree doesn't really make you. And
Yeah,
when I thought more into this one, I thought like, yes, a lot of people will obtain higher education and then they'll really just think that you're supposed to be impressed just because of that. So, what has been your experience with, this looking good on paper, but in practice, it's not so great?
specifically talking about the degrees.
Mm-hmm.
That one is. I feel like that's one of those things that lets you be divided from other people. Almost sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
gives people the idea that they're better than someone else who doesn't have one. And the thing is that I've met people who have like a high school diploma and they're very educated and articulate. And
Mm-hmm.
I've met people with college diplomas who was like, hey, whatever, like I'm gonna talk how I want to talk. I'm gonna do what I want to do. It, it all varies depending on who you talk to. Like I tend to veer towards I want someone who is more educated, whether that's a degree or not. But education is not always a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be very misleading, and I feel like it's just another way to judge somebody sometimes. And
Yeah.
that can tend to be like a bad school of thought. So I try not to think too much about that. I just more so think about, are you, I guess the inverse of that, if I would say, like, if you're worried about finding someone, like talking about someone with a whole bunch of degrees or something like that, I think the thing would be, are they driven? Do they have a profession? Is it something that they're passionate about that they can build and they have the skills, or they have the passion to get the skills that they need to build their passion? So
Right.
yeah, uh, yeah. But I have met, I have dated women without degrees, and like it kind of worked out just like it seemed. It was like, oh, okay. But
What
she,
you mean by that?
I mean, the particular situations I'm thinking of, they just weren't very. They didn't seem very ambitious.
Okay.
Yeah, but sometimes I've dated women with higher degrees, and their school of thought was just so far beyond mine. It's not. I wouldn't say they were more educated than me, but the way that their thought process was so different because
Hmm.
of a different kind of education. Because I always say I've learned more out of school than I have in school. School
I would
teaches.
say mine would be both, like on kind of equal levels.
You think so? I
I
just feel like
do.
it equips you to learn, and I guess it's because of my field too. It's my
Mm,
field. My field is more like a continuing. Like here, this is what it is, but it's going to change every day.
right.
So that's kind of how I feel about that. What about you?
So for me, I look at it like one thing you said that sparked the thought was like dating the people who automatically think that they're intellectuals because of that education, and that's not necessarily the case. I've met a lot of people who have a very structured way of thinking because of their education, if that makes sense. So like you're not creative, in a lot of ways, or you don't necessarily think outside the box. Like everything is structured because you are so used to that structured way of learning. You don't ever think outside the box, and you don't really know how to use like critical thinking on a realistic level outside of the textbook work and all that stuff. So when it comes to people who praise themselves for having a degree, I'm like, I always feel proud of an accomplishment. I have no problem with that. But as far as you thinking that because of your level of education that you might know more than me or someone else, that's when it becomes a problem for me. And I have seen people in the dating world, in my own personal experience, who try to do that. And you're talking at me and not having a conversation with me
Yeah,
because you feel as though you have something to teach me based on this accolade that you've acquired that tells you that you are more intellectual, on a societal base than anyone else. And I'm just like, no.
it
you
says
know.
street smarts too, though. I
Mm,
feel like sometimes situations can teach you way more than school ever can.
right.
If you talk about coming out of a situation where you had to go through some mental or physical or any kind of hardship, and you made it out and you made it to a level where you can even meet somebody that has maybe multiple degrees, just to be, I don't think people understand sometimes how hard it is to get out of certain situations and the things that you can really learn just from life.
Hmm.
And I think when you just been educated, you forget about some of the street smarts, because street teaches you a lot. It's street teaches you stuff that school can't teach you.
Because it teaches you to rely not on a textbook, not on an instructor. It teaches you to rely on yourself. And so you dig deep and you find what's already there instead of you trying to search for answers that's been placed in front of you, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
for me, that's why I say like my degree, I use it every day. I got a bachelor's in sociology. This conversation, what I'm saying, is a product of my degree. That's why I say I feel like I have 50-50 because education, it opened up my mind to wanting to learn,
yeah,
right? And the avenues of how I can go about learning in different ways, whether it's Google or, having to search scholar articles and stuff like that. Like I do that all the time for research, even when I'm not in school. So like I use it often, but I also have enough life experience where I did acquire those street smarts too. So, you know, I want someone who is well rounded and has that same kind of mentality when it comes to not just focusing on the degree that they have, but what are you actually doing with the information? And can you actually understand that just because you have this doesn't make you better than someone else? And I shouldn't just be so impressed off
Yeah.
this first impression that you have a degree.
I mean that's not even something that I just bring up, like, because my degrees and stuff and my awards that I got,
Oh, your degrees.
my degrees and my accolades that I got from school, they just sitting on the shelf. They're not even on my wall.
Now I put mine up because, first gen.
I feel that. That's fair. I mean, I guess me too, but like to be fair, it's just like I moved into my place and I was like, they can stay on the bookshelf. Like I know I graduated. You know what I'm saying? I know I have
Yeah.
honors. You know what I'm saying? But it's just not. One thing that this is making me think of, it was an article or something. I can't remember. It was a while ago, but it was talking about young women who went through school and were like highly skilled at being able to read the book and all of that stuff. How after they graduated, they would graduate with honors and all of this. But when they got into real life, because it wasn't structured the way that the books and stuff was structured, they
Hmm.
struggled because they had never learned that what you said, like the critical.
Critical thinking.
It just was so. Whenever I'm out, like I try to, I feel like it's a balance.
Hmm.
Anybody who just leans too much on the degree, so many times I've seen people like who went to a certain school. Like I live in Michigan, so I've seen people. That's a particular school here that people go to, and they feel like just by going to that school, they better than you,
Hmm.
regardless of where you went. And I went
Right.
to a rival school, and they were like, "Oh, we just way better than you." So I just, as long as I think if you have the right characteristics
Hmm.
and you meet somebody who's educated or who has degrees or whatnot, that will never be an issue.
Right. It's just like you
But
said, like going back to the critical thinking piece. That's something that you need in relationships. Just tying it back in, you need to like. I've had conversations with people who are very much book smart, but then when I'm talking to you and we're trying to problem solve, you just don't have the tools I need you to have because you are so used to that structure. And it's
yeah,
just like, I'm sorry that you learned this formula and it's carried you through all up to your higher education. But it's time to leave that where it's at because now in the world and how it is, you need critical thinking skills.
you got to be able to adapt
Hmm.
to situations because I'm old enough to remember when computers really wasn't a thing. Like I
Damn,
didn't
how old are you, Rick?
have we didn't have a computer growing up. We didn't have a computer growing up like elementary school and when we in middle school, even when we would do like a project, I would have a project and I would have to go get like a poster board and some go to the library and like do research and write
Yeah,
it
I
down.
still did that now.
No, I mean, and type it out. I mean, like now you don't even have to go to the library. You could go like hit up Google, Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Like I was in the library with stacks of books and then referencing the books, and now it's like you don't have to do that. And then you could print everything out, and it looks nice. And like I had to get like crayons and colors, and it's just a different feeling. It's a completely
Hmm.
different thing that a lot of kids, our kids will never know it.
Right. All right. So the next one is the one with the quote unquote good job. And I love this one because I thought about it a while ago, and I think a builder did touch on it, but they didn't say it exactly like this. But basically, it's like when someone places their value in what they do. So their whole personality is wrapped up in the fact that they have a job. And I think when it comes to the quote unquote good job, that you see that play out, at least I see that play out a lot with men. Like they get credit for having a good job and they give themselves credit for having a good job. Where it's just like, okay.
I think a lot of that is societal. Like
Oh
a lot of
yeah.
do with like you just start to think about African Americans or Black culture in general. Like that's
Hmm.
a lot of that is get a good job, marry a man with a good job. Those
Hmm.
depending on which side of it you are, that's what was preached. Get a good job, be an engineer, doctor, lawyer. If you hear people from like Nigeria and stuff like that, when they come over here, it's like you got to be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer,
That's it. The
and that's
top five.
that's pretty much it. So I get that one. Whenever you put your identity in something like a job, is very limiting. And I think the thing that people also need to understand is that it's always that conundrum. I've heard women be like, I want you to make more money. I want you to make a ton of money, but I want you to be here 24/7. And
Now,
it's
have
like
you heard those extremes though, or are you just exaggerating?
that situation. I mean that's an extreme version of the conversation, but
Okay.
I want you to make a lot more money, but I want you to be able to be here all the time. And it's like the things that I need to do in order to make a lot of money, whether it's me making it on my own with a side hustle or at a job, is going to require me to take a lot more time. And that's time away from you. So yes, I got this good job, but I don't have the time to spend. Like I've been watching this show, it's called The Single Life. I don't know, you into that 90
I
Day?
saw the commercial for it. Isn't that the Married at First Sight spinoff or something?
The 90
90
Day
Day Fiance, right?
90 Day Fiance. So I was watching that, and one of the women on there was dating like this lawyer who had his own law firm,
Hmm.
and that was dope. And but he was like not returning her phone calls and texts and stuff like that. But then when they got together, he would do like these extravagant dates. You know what I mean? Like he would buy
Hmm.
rent out a yacht and go have dinner on a yacht and stuff like that. But he still didn't have the time to do all of the other stuff.
So that's something that looks great on paper, like
Oh,
the person
it's
with the great job, the big bank account. But in practice, it's just like, what does this actually mean for what I want? And
think
if you
about
are someone who wants that time, you want someone to have a more balanced life, then that's probably you're gonna have to ask those questions of like, okay, what's your schedule look like? What does your schedule look like? Okay, you make six figures or whatever. How does that translate into how much time you're gonna be able to spend? So
And the answer to that sometimes is unfortunately like very little. Like if
mhm.
you're building something, if you're like, oh, like I like you because you're building an empire. Empires take time to build,
Mhm.
and even with what we do, like podcasting and production and making a show and
Oh, we
writing,
gonna get there to the creative and entrepreneur.
it takes time. It's like, yo, I can't stop every minute to come talk to you because like I'm on the mic. Like I got to do
Mhm.
this, and then after I finish that, you hear an hour product, but it took me 4 hours to do it. So
Right. I think the angle I'm still looking at it from, because I mean there's many different angles you can look at it from, but I think the one that resonates with me the most is the fact that people assign their personality to this good job. I see it in my job where I talk to people, or you'll see it like I was telling my best friend, we were talking about this topic yesterday. She was helping me write the outline just through conversation, right? Shout
yeah,
out to Spy Danny.
uh,
Um, and I was telling her about this guy. He was interested in me. It was years ago. And I just never could I never really liked him just because I just felt like it was nothing behind his personality. He was very proud of the work that he was doing, but that was all I knew about him.
being
That
proud
was it.
is
Huh?
one. I said being proud of work is one thing. Like if you're doing like philanthropy, like oh, I'm doing this stuff that's gonna really help the world. It's gonna change the world.
Hmm.
Being proud of a job is something else.
Exactly. But that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? If it was a passion that he was pursuing, right? And I'm not saying that a job can't be a passion, but it just how am I trying to articulate this? I can tell when people assign their self-worth to what they do and not so much even understand who they are. So like you'll get all this stuff, right? You'll get the good job, you'll get the big bank account, you'll get whatever, and you'll assign your self-worth to that because you don't even know who you are. And these are the same people like they'll have like work related stuff all up and through their house. And I'm just like, I don't want
I don't want to bring work home.
I don't want to do that. This is what I do, not who I am. But those people can't differentiate between those two. Like they really think that what they do is exactly who they are. And so they start performing in a certain way. So it's the same concept when you see someone with Greek life. It's the same concept when you see someone in the
Not
military. I mean, we gonna talk about it. I mean, it's the same concept where it's just like you stop being yourself and you start start conforming to an idea of what you should be. But who are you? And so while I was talking to her about this guy, I was like, and he never grew out of it. He went on to find different things and get all these different accolades, and then he started conforming to those accolades. I'm like, I still don't know who you are as a person. So
I feel like sometimes, like even with the education thing and this especially, sometimes it's easier to find identity, whether it's fake or not, in the things that you do and done, than actually looking within yourself and trying to actually find out who you are as a person.
right, and I think life experiences help with that too. I can't discount that a lot of the things I've been through have forced me to, you know, find myself as a person. So I'm not judging someone else's experience. As far as dating goes though, I immediately recognize people that do that. When in conversation you have nothing else to talk about but what you do, which is another experience I had. I had this guy, very sweet guy, always wanted to take me out, sent me stuff. You know what I'm saying? Very great. But every time we on the phone, you talking about work.
Yeah.
You have nothing else to offer in a conversation. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know who you are. What do you like? When I ask you, you have nothing to tell me.
No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is a little bit off subject, but do you think that sometimes jobs contribute to the way that people treat other people in an aspect of particular jobs force you to look at life a certain way, if that makes sense?
Give me an example.
Uh, how about like law enforcement? Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
law enforcement, they're always on edge because they're always ready to go. They're trained to forever be ready, and maybe they deal with people that are not on the up and up. Have you ever found that dating people in careers such as that, like I know you can kind of relate to some of that,
Mhm.
ever changes the way that people are personally in their personal lives?
Yes. I think that jobs don't force you, but they encourage you, right? So if you're we spend so much of our lives working, right? And if you have a structured job like a law enforcement job or even a 9 to 5, the culture around that industry and in that particular, job setting that you're at is going to influence you on some level. So one of the things that when I was job searching some years ago, people were encouraging me to become a correctional officer. I told them no. You know what I'm saying? I had all the credit. I had all the things I needed to get the job, but I was just like, no, I would have to change too much of myself to conform to what this job is asking. You know what I'm saying? And even if I were to go in there and try to fight against and try to keep, some agency over myself, there's certain things I would have to perform that would change me, So I do think that people, based on what they do, they can change, they can be influenced, and um it's yeah. Because I even know some officers, and I had to check in with them. Like I have some friends, and I had to ask, like, hey, how are you doing? You black and you wear a uniform. How are you feeling with everything that's been going on in the country? How have you been handling things? And when you can't go and talk to a lot of people within your own community or even your own family about this stuff because it seems like you on the wrong side to
Yeah.
them. So I do know that relationships can be affected by what the two individuals in them could do or more, because polyamory is a thing.
Ooh, I'm trying to find one.
That's it. um the military man is the next one.
Oh, he's laughing so hard right now.
I'm laughing because one of my battle buddies gave me this one, and I immediately was like, "This is a red flag." Anybody who has been in any armed forces knows that this looks so great on paper to so many civilians,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many women still uphold and uplift the military man. And they will just think that it's the greatest thing in the world. I'm not saying it's not. What I'm saying is behind that, I know a lot more and I've seen a lot more. And I know that sometimes y'all praise the wrong stuff. You'll praise the title without understanding what's behind it so much. So in my experience, I know how people when they are in relationships or they might be married, how they act when we have training. Because
Yeah.
they don't act married and they don't act like they're in a relationship, right? Um, and I know how a lot of times it can be someone who they just started their career and they don't really understand what it means to, be in the forces. But when they go back in their hometown and go back to their families and go back to their significant other, they're the superstar. I'm
Yeah.
just like, you ain't did that. So, have you seen this?
I
Like, it might not be the military man, but have you seen like a version of this?
No, I haven't seen anything like that, but I think that just kind of it's a society thing, really, because anytime you look at any kind of title that seems prestigious and you really don't know what goes into it, you praise the title
Mm.
more than the work that it took to get that title.
So it's like the mystery of it. The thing that a lot of people wouldn't be able to do themselves is why I think a lot of praise is had when it comes to especially this title.
Yeah, just thinking about just going through basic training, like most civilians probably wouldn't be able to handle that.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Just some of the stuff that you have to do to get physically and mentally ready is I would, like for you, it looks one way because you've been through a lot of that stuff. But for someone who hasn't, like myself, that just getting through that to get to that spot where you actually are, you graduated.
Hmm.
Um, I give a lot of respect to those people just because it takes a lot just to get through training.
Right. And I mean, I have respect.
No, I mean,
It's just the
kind of point of view though because you've been through it.
yeah. I always have respect, But as far as when it comes to dating, yeah, like y'all. I'm telling you, I don't know a lot of faithful military men, and I've been in almost 10 years, and I'm not saying that to say there's none.
Yeah.
Because I mean, of course there are. I've dated military men and we've had great relationships and great connections. But on the vast majority of what I've seen, it's just like and then on the outside when you see these people they get these passes, they get the golden platter, the entrance into to they get like a golden ticket when it comes to dating because of this. And on the other side, I'm just like, girl, no. He
Oh,
the worst one. He one of the worst ones.
you know what? Sometimes women can change, man. Though
Uh-uh.
I wouldn't say so much that they change, man. Sometimes you meet that woman that makes you want to become a better version of yourself.
Even when you married.
Oh, I mean, what?
This is what I'm saying. Exactly.
All right,
So
what's the weather there? I don't
the
know.
person who gave military men, she knows. She knows what I'm talking about too. And please don't get on me. I am not bashing my
Right.
bros in arms. Okay, they know what it is though, because it be the women too. Let's be clear, it's the women too. I just don't see women getting like the golden ticket in the same way when it comes to dating as men do. Men get put up on a pedestal because they're in the military. Women, it's just like, oh, you're doing something cool that I wouldn't think you would be doing. You know, some men get googly eyes when you tell them, but for the majority of it, it's not a focal point of dating. Whereas when it comes to men, a woman will assign her personality a lot of times to his job,
Hmm.
right? So you'll have a lot of women who they think they're the same rank as their, spouse who is in or their boyfriend who is in the military. It's like, girl, you ain't served a day in your life. Stop it.
I've seen that before.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
definitely seen that before.
The Greek.
The Greek.
The Greek.
Man, Greeks. I never pledged. I thought about it a couple times, but
What were you gonna pledge, Rick?
I don't see. I never even had one particular. Like I was
You
never.
never had one. You just say, I think I might.
I was a pretty popular guy in college, so I had people try to get me to pledge. I think a lot of people thought that I might pledge was a Kappa,
Hmm.
and one of my good friends, he's a Sigma, and we were going through school the same time. So I was intrigued because that's like one of my real life brothers, you know.
Hmm.
Maybe I'd do that. But then I saw the crap he went through, and I was like, I couldn't do it. So I think it's a beautiful thing with that sisterhood. I'm trying to think if I've ever like dated seriously someone that's been through. It's just like having like them having a bunch of sisters.
So the LSS. I mean, because that's what it is. It's a sisterhood. I think when we think about the Greek, where we were talking about male or female, it's like again, celebrate. You
Mhm.
know, being a part of something that's different from you, but understand it's not just who you are. And it's a lot of people I'll see. It's just like your favorite color is the same color as you know what I'm saying, your organization, and just like, is that really what your favorite color is, or are you just, you know what I'm saying? And it's a lot of conforming that comes into play, where it's just like, I don't know who you are outside. I can read your chapter statement and your organizational, goals and, statement, and I can know who you are because you're just embodying everything, to a T about what it means to be your organization. But who are you really outside? If I strip away everything, who are you?
I think
So,
everything that you're saying for every one that we've had so far kind of just goes into the thing in society that I feel like a lot of us do not really know who we are apart from organizations and jobs and achievements.
in
Because
conformity.
yeah, so a lot of times like I've seen women like one type of move or one type of music and one type of sport, and they get with someone who likes a completely different type of music and a completely different type of sport. It's just like Coming to America Part One.
Hmm.
We don't claim the second one. It's like Coming to America, where she's like, well, how do you like your eggs? However you like.
Whatever you like.
Yeah, it's like too many times I feel like, I mean, men and women, I feel like we conform ourselves to fit the narrative of the person that we're trying to date or trying to be with to fit whatever we think that they want.
Hmm.
Instead of just being ourselves, because it's so much easier. I feel like people think it's so much easier to try to be something that they're not than to actually figure out what they are.
Right. So with saying that, when it comes to, like, I've dated men who, have been a part of Greek life, and for the most part, they didn't lean into it. You know what I'm saying? They didn't make their whole existence about being a part of this organization, right? They didn't play into the stereotypes of the organization. I think that's when I start seeing where it comes into play, because I have seen people, they'll play into the stereotypes about what it means to be a part of, their chapter or their Greek organization. And it's just like, but that's not, I knew you before this. That's not who you are. And
Yeah.
if it's who you are now, like, you should be questioning yourself why, like, is this really what I like? Is this really what I believe? Or is it just me conforming? Is it just me falling into the expectations about what it means to be a part of this?
Yeah. I don't know. It's tough. Like well, having not gone through it and seen people, I've seen people. I know people who super serious about it. Like that's them all day. But
Yeah. Talking about they got the cardigan on,
they only wear one color. It's blue. Like
it.
that's it.
But your favorite color was orange before this. So I'm just like, and I also, I can't discount the fact that you went through an emotional experience, and this could, now you have, emotional attachments to, your letters and to your colors, which is supposed to be the case. But I've seen a lot of people just lean too much into what it means to be the organization instead of who they are within the organization, right?
That's a big distinction.
Mm-hmm. Uh, the next one is the product of marriage. And someone gave me this and they said that um, when you come from marriage, a lot of times you think that you already know how relationships work.
Mm.
And then I started thinking about it and I was like, it's either that and you can also pick up bad expectations and place them on that other person when you're dating. So because you feel like you know how relationships work, you still might be internalizing a lot of those outdated misogynistic gender roles that really aren't going to be beneficial for you. So both of us come from marriage.
Yeah.
Um, how have you seen that play out with either dating someone else who comes from marriage or you yourself dating?
I can remember growing up and watching my parents, and the thing about it is that I feel like if I'm really honest with myself, a lot of the way that I am when it comes to relationships is based either negatively or positively on their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's either something I saw and I was like, in a relationship, I would never want to be like that,
Mm-hmm.
or it's something I saw, it's like, yes, that's definitely something that I want in a relationship. So I just feel like it's a different experience having, coming from marriage. Be And there's so many different, like, I feel like it's almost seems like less common now to come from marriage, and especially like if your parents are still together, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
not a product of divorce. And I feel like it's too much negative stereotypes put on other people who haven't come from marriage or come from that you automatically put baggage on them. A lot of times I tend to do
Yeah.
that too. So that's something I try to actively make sure that I'm not doing, because you don't get to choose how you grew up. You just get to choose how you react to the things that's happened in your life to the point that you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something I try to pay attention to. I don't know. I have never met, and it's like I can't even really think of anybody that I dated. I've never thought of that as a big deal. You know what I mean? That's
If
never.
they came from it or not.
Yeah.
Did they make it a big deal about you coming from marriage or had
I
expectations?
I think that I think that they maybe hold on. Shiloh,
You
chill out, bro. Calm down.
said y'all gonna hear me.
He's like, I want to be a part of this. I think it's an expectation of like saying that I feel like people women, some women have tended to treat me like I had so many more advantages from coming from a product of marriage. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you've had so much more. You had two parents in the house. It's like, you don't know what my situation was. Like,
And what does that mean?
could have been an advantage or disadvantage. It might have been better the other way around. Like, you don't
Right.
know, because some single parents do better than two parents put together. You know what I'm saying? It just
Hmm.
depends on the structure of where you're coming from. So I do feel like it has been that stigma put on me, like, oh, look, we got a guess.
Listen.
It is a stigma. Sometimes I feel like they look at me like in a privileged way, and it's like, yo, this is it's a blessing. I say it's a blessing, but I wouldn't put any privilege on it. Like, it's great to have both of my parents, have grown up with them, but there was times things wasn't always perfect, and it
Hmm.
might not. It's not like it was TV. TV's always perfect. It wasn't that.
Oh, we weren't the Cosbys.
No, not at all. So you know what I mean. There was problems and things that came from them being married that may not. If they hadn't been married, it might have been a different thing. So yeah, that is the only thing. That's the main thing that I've seen. Is like, and then I seem like that when I was a lot younger. It's just like, oh, you're privileged because your parents are married, and
Yeah. Um, the same here. I had to grapple with the fact that I was both privileged and disadvantaged because of the specific details of my situation of coming from marriage. Because people did, as a woman, especially coming from marriage, it's like you're put on a pedestal because it's like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what the mindset is. It's like maybe she's not broken. I think that's what it is. It's like, oh, she's not coming from a broken home, so therefore she's not broken.
yeah,
Um, then when I tell people about,
about that.
the specifics, it's just like, no, it's plenty of times where I was just like, please get divorced. just do it.
Hey, that's real.
It's real. It's like,
That's
come on now.
my parents still married. I felt like that at times. Like y'all still together? That's cute.
hmm
Like how did y'all make it? Because I thought y'all would have got a divorce.
But even that, so like, on the other side of that, I've seen people who they'll look at the fact that their parents were together for a long time, right? So my parents were together for 30 plus years
Yeah,
before my father passed away. And they'll look at it and they'll want that, right? They'll want that longevity. But what does that really mean? So, you're more focused on staying in a marriage now. So a lot of women will stay,
yeah,
or men, they'll see, that their father has been married for X amount of years in his life. So they'll just be focused on, you know, getting someone who can replicate. What you said?
I muted. I was yelling at Shiloh.
You did not mute because I heard all of
How
that.
did you do that? It was supposed to be muted. My bad.
But they'll be so focused on like emulating their dad that they try to get their mom, in the dating world.
Ooh,
And so you still are playing into those gender roles when it's just like you haven't really gained an understanding that your parents were people before they had you and during your lifetime. You haven't had conversations with them to know the struggles and everything else that they've actually gone through in their marriage. And even if you do know some of that stuff, like, oh yeah, my dad messed up, he stepped out, or whatever the case may be, then you normalize it because to you that's what's normal.
yeah,
That's what you've seen. And so the whole coming from marriage is a lot of times people thinking that because they have that privilege, then they themselves know how to date in a healthy way when in actuality you do not. So it looks great on paper, but when you come to me with these outdated gender roles and these expectations that I'm going to be your mama, then we got a problem, because I'm not her. I have different expectations based on my own agency over my, body and the way that I want to operate in this world. And if you aren't ready to face the reality of the things that are changing within the world because you're looking at your parents' marriage, then you're not going to be successful in dating somebody of this world. Um,
that was very
the
that was very deep and thoughtful.
Thank you. I try. The above average intellect. So this is, I guess, is a little bit different. This isn't the same as like the person with education, but I think we've all at least experienced someone who is like really, really smart,
Too smart.
too smart. What's your experience with that?
Oh man, the thing about being with somebody that's too smart is a lot of times they tend to cut themselves off from correction because they think
Mm-hmm.
that everything that they do is correct. And I've been guilty of this at times myself in my younger years, but you tend to think that you're too, if you think you know everything, then nothing else can be true that doesn't fit what you know.
Right. And you can't learn.
Yeah, and you can't learn, and it's just kind of annoying because
No.
you can't have any growth without having a back and forth. But if that person automatically thinks they're right, like I think of friendships where people thought they automatically was right, and that's kind of like it's such a grinding block because a lot of times in those situations when you have conversations where you don't agree, either you one of y'all just grind to a halt. Usually, it's not even like it's not a back and forth because I already know everything. It's just like it just grinds it to a halt, and there's no growth, and it's just frustration. It's
Mm-hmm.
incredibly difficult, and it's just
You sound like you really experienced it.
yeah, I have like for real. Like it's just so it's like yeah, you're smart. That's cool, but you're not smart in every aspect of life. You might be smart in A, B, C, but if we're talking about C, D, and E, A, B, and C don't mean the same thing as C, D, and E.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just, I don't know.
I feel you on that, and it's just I love smart men, and so usually I gravitate towards these men, these intellectuals, because I'm an intellectual person. It is very, very important for me to be stimulated mentally, and to be able to have and carry a conversation. The downfall of that is, sir, you're not always in a position to teach me because
Mm-mm.
you don't know. So like it'll be the language around the conversation a lot of times where it's just like at first glance and first impressions, you're excited that you can carry a conversation with this person. And then you start realizing that this person always think that they gotta tell me
They
what I should think and how I should do something and how I should operate. Like they're teaching me as if I wasn't operating as an adult and as if I'm not as intelligent as them. And then you realize that they really don't think that you're as smart as they are.
you ever get that mansplaining?
The mansplaining. Oh my God.
I think that's a yes.
I hate it. And every time it happens, I get quiet and have to explain to the person, why are you explaining this to me? What made you think that I didn't know this?
Yeah.
You didn't ask if I knew. You just assumed I didn't know because you assumed you were the smartest one in the room, which is not true. I've had to do that several times to men. And it's just like, you're intellectual, but that doesn't mean you're smarter than me. And it's not a competition. Like it's supposed to be a give and take. I'm supposed to be able to learn from you. You're supposed to be able to learn from me. We're supposed to be able to teach each other. But if you're always putting yourself in a position to be the teacher, then how are you ever going to learn?
Yeah. I can think of a situation where I was dating someone who was like really intelligent, and I was talking about chess. I was explaining something like my branding for one of my brands has a pawn in a chess piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I was explaining why I did it, and I was explaining the way the pawn works in chess, because I feel like chess is more of an obscure thing for people to know how it works. It wasn't because I didn't think she was intelligent. I was explaining how the pawn worked. I was like, "Oh, this is the pawn. I don't know if you're familiar with this. I'm familiar with it," and she was so offended that I wanted to explain it, and it wasn't because she was a woman. It wasn't because she was who she was. It's that most people that I've come across don't know anything about chess.
Did you ask her that before you started
Like,
explaining?
I don't know if you know about this or not. It was kind of like a whole thing because the whole story is based around the explanation of a pawn.
Right.
But she was like so offended, and I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you know." But instead of just being like, "Yo, I know what that is," I'm like, "Oh, cool." It was like, "Yo, like I don't believe that you." It's like, all right, my bad. Like most people don't know. I apologize. And it became such a thing because it's like you're insulting their intellect because you didn't assume that they already knew what that was.
All right. I mean, but that's where communication comes into play. Like a lot of times, it's miscommunication. Causes these moments we have with people. And I do know, like, even sometimes when men ask me, "Hey, you know such and such," they don't wait for my answer. They immediately start explaining. And I'm just like, wait a minute, I already know. What are you doing? Because you assumed I didn't know, and you were excited to feel like the superior one and showing me something that you thought would be new to me. You know what I'm saying?
That's a superior thing. I thought it would be like teaching you something new. I get excited to teach people something new. Like, hey, you don't know this? Let me teach you. Like, bet. Like, let me
But
put you.
if it's not new to me and you don't wait for me to tell you it's not new to me, then it is a little bit of a superiority complex because you feel like you're in a position to teach me something new. You know what I'm saying? Instead of
I
you.
would disagree because it's just an exuberance thing. Sometimes people are so excited they don't wait for the other people to answer. I don't think it's a superiority thing. I think it's like I'm so excited to share this information with you that it's not that I think I'm better than you. It's just like I want to show you something. I think
I agree with that to a certain extent. I feel like a lot of times it's that small thing that people continuously do, right? So if it's always, oh, I'm excited to show you this new thing, but you're
yeah.
not waiting for me to tell you whether it's new or not. That's not just you excited to show me this new thing. That's you always feeling like you're in a position to show me a new thing instead of just seeing if I know it or not. um, yeah, but we
No,
can agree to disagree.
no, I mean I agree, just differently. Like I agree. You know, because I mean, it don't have to be 100%. Like in certain situations,
Yeah,
like
you got gray areas, of
it can be,
course.
it can be both. Both can be correct.
All right, the big spender.
A big spender. Bum,
What's that Jay Z song? Oh,
Some
this Big Pippin.
I thought he had a
Never
big.
mind.
I don't know.
This Big Pippin. Never mind. Sorry, y'all.
Man,
So this
completely.
one, huh?
Maybe it's not. I said that's completely different, but I was like, well, maybe it's not.
That it is. Oh, well,
Maybe it's not.
I don't know. Never mind. Um, so the one that doesn't mind spending money on you,
Hmm.
but then you have to, it looks good at first sight, then wine it and dine it, but then you have to start questioning, like, is this person financially responsible and stable? Because how much they make isn't keeping up with their spending habits,
Hmm.
and even though they seem generous, it could be carelessness too. So, have you
Definitely.
had that experience?
Um, I don't know. I mean, like I've never met. I'm a guy, and I'm kind of traditional. So I guess probably some people could see me as a big spender. Because I don't mind spending on the person that I'm crazy about, and it's only
Hmm.
gonna be one person at a time. I ain't about to be you like blowing stacks for like 20 different women, but
But your bills will be paid too, so it's not like you being
I,
irresponsible.
I'm financially responsible. Just as in a general thing, whenever I hear about somebody talking about a big spender, the main issue that they tend to run into is that if your love language is not gifts, and that's tends to be the only love language that people like that know how to speak. And it's like, hey, I'm spending all this money on you. You should know that I care about you and that I love you. And that's not always the case. And I feel like that's when that gray area starts, where I've seen women be excited to date a big spender, and then they realize that that's all they got. They
That's all
have
they have to offer.
anything else. Like they don't have time for you. They don't have any sincerity for you. They just got this money for you, and that's it. And that's all you're getting is the money.
He got a black card, girl, but yeah. I've heard women talk about that too, where it's just like everyone's saying that they want to date a man, kind of like what we were talking about early, date a man with a certain salary or a certain amount in his bank account. But what does that mean? Like, he's going to be able to spend on you, but that might be all you're getting from this person,
Yeah.
because he doesn't have anything of substance to offer, or he don't have the time to even try to offer, anything else to you. And then I've always just thought like I can't be bought. Like, that's always my thing too.
Yeah.
But as far as I wouldn't say big spender, but I did have a situation where a guy, he came to see me. I think we went out, took me on a date or whatever, and he didn't have enough gas money to get back home.
Yo.
And I was just like, "Why did you come? Like, what was your thought process with this whole thing? And what made you think it was okay for you to think that I was going to chip in on your gas tank?" And his logic was, "Well, I came to see you." That's when I realized I wasn't so great at dating, and I had to improve some stuff because
Man.
I had to hold myself accountable for that. But yeah, so um a lot of times when somebody leads with how much they make and all this different kind of stuff, my first question is like seeing if this person is financially responsible
Yeah.
and seeing if they're financially literate and if they understand money, you know.
That's a good point. It definitely is. Yeah. It's just so much that comes with that too. And not to make a generalization, but I'm gonna make a generalization. A lot of those people, like especially those men, like who have like unlimited resources, they tend to be more free with it.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, they're doing that to you, and it might be special to you, but they're doing it to 15 other different women at the same time.
Right.
And then at the same time, you take another flip. The other thing that I hear is that, yo, I did this for you. Like I spent all this money on you. What you got for
The tit for tat.
me? What you
Hmm.
got for me, girl? You about to give me some of that 11? You know what I'm saying? Like what you
Which
think?
is, I mean, listen, if that's the kind of transactions, because some people do choose to have that. It's just like, I don't care if he got other 15, girls, as long as let me, get what I need. Let me get these Louis Vuittons and,
I mean,
everything else. That's, if that's how you want to do, that's perfectly fine. Just don't be expecting anything else from this person. A lot of times you get your feelings hurt when you expect the big spender to have a lot more to offer. If he does, you really hit the jackpot.
I'd rather have someone who wants to be a big builder.
Can we do both? Might need a spin to build a little bit.
Sometimes it's hard to do both because you have to really be focused on what you're building. And when as you build and you start to get a level of success, you start to think about the stuff that you could do with the money that you're going to spend to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why sometimes it's hard for people like us to spend money on ourselves. Like I can spend it on somebody that I'm in love with. Like I have a
Yeah.
woman right now, she could call me. I'm not in a relationship, but I have women right now who could call me. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And ask for something. I'll be like, I got you. But at the same time, like it could be like $200. Like I would have a hard time spending that $200 on
On
myself.
me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All right. The alpha or the independent woman?
My goodness,
I'll let you go first on this.
man.
What has been your experience with independent women, quote unquote?
So the quote unquote independent women that I've dealt with are not actually quote unquote independent. A lot of times the only problem that I have with, well, I guess it's two things. Like number one is that you have to keep the same energy throughout everything. If you want to be independent, don't try to be independent when it's suitable for you and not independent when it's not.
Meaning.
Meaning that if you want to take care of yourself all the time, don't all of a sudden like, oh, I got you now, you do this too, and I'm gonna do me. It's like, no, if you're doing you, you do you.
Even in a relationship?
No, I mean, because I'm different in the relationship. But what I'm saying is that if you want to spout that you're independent and then I'm paying all the bills, like how
Oh
are you
yeah.
independent?
Okay.
You're
I got
not
you.
independent at that point. You want to be part of a relationship.
Be a little bit dependent, and that's okay.
Yeah. And the other thing is that sometimes it's hard to build with someone that's a woman that has had to rely on themselves for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And because a lot of times they don't want to, I mean, I feel like either way it goes, whether it's a man or a woman that had to depend on themselves for a long time, you kind of forget how to compromise and you forget how to make concessions for the other person because you're so used to just getting it your way.
Mm-hmm.
When you're by yourself and you're independent, you can get it your way all the time. But when you're in a relationship, you have to consider the other person in the relationship.
Right.
And I feel like that's a stumbling block that some people come across when like they've been the independent woman, but now you're trying to be in a relationship, you're trying to join with someone, and you're so used to being independent. Sometimes it can be a stumbling block.
I can agree with that. I do feel like, in my own experience, because I'm very independent, I do pay all my bills. But being in different connections and getting into a relationship, I had to come to grasp with either choosing to be remain independent or to do the dependency thing, which was very hard. It was a hard decision to make because
It's hard for you to say the word.
it's still hard. Okay. Anyway, we gonna keep moving. Because vulnerability is involved with that, right? So vulnerability and trust, right? So when I see, women and they're independent and then they make the proclamation like all the time that I'm independent, I don't need nothing, I do it for myself. It's just like, girl, you don't have to keep reminding us. Like that's number one, that's fine. But it's also going to come a time where dependency is not going to be a choice. You're going to probably get into a season in your life where you need to be dependent and you need to trust other people because we can't do life by ourselves. That's why we're here together. So, that doesn't mean invite everybody in or be dependent on everybody, but you should cultivate a circle around you that you can, go to for that trust and that vulnerability and that dependency. Um, so I can see in my own like friend groups and stuff like that where that has been an issue because we roll in packs, okay? Independent women, we stick together, but we it's a lot of us that have acknowledged that okay, at some point I'm gonna have to make a choice whether I'm gonna relinquish control or not over some of this stuff. Like I can't be in control all the time. I can't be independent if I want to be in a relationship 24/7, and I can't expect someone to want to be open and vulnerable and dependent on me when it comes to certain things if I'm not giving that in return.
Hey, say it again. Say it again.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into this alpha.
I feel it. All of that is a balancing act, and it's always like, what are you willing to accept? You might
Mhm.
want something, but what are you willing to give up? Because
What are
there's
you
so many
willing to give
times where
up?
we think that we can have it all, and sometimes you can have it all. But more times in life, I've seen it's been times that you have to sacrifice because I wanted to graduate from college, but I wanted to party too. Couldn't party all the time and graduate. Chances are because you have to put a little bit of work in to graduate.
Hmm.
So you have to really. It's like I want to lose weight, but I want to eat all these Krispy Kreme donuts. You know what I'm saying?
I like Krispy Kreme.
I know, but it's a balance in that. You can't eat it every day. You might be able to eat it here and there, but you can't eat it all the time. So it's a balancing act between what you're willing to give up. Like if you want to be fit, you can't just sit on the couch and think that you're about to like have a six pack. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
it's just work that has to go into it, and sometimes people aren't willing to give the things that it takes to get what they want. So that's why they will see celebrities and athletes and they be like, I want that, but did you see all of the things that's behind it that it took to get that? And are you willing to give those things in order to possibly achieve that?
I agree with that. The other part of it was the alpha man, which to me is the same thing as independency, but because we like to assign negative connotation to women and not so much to men, we
Alpha,
call men alphas.
alpha bad? That sounds horrible.
When you think about the way that it is structured to say like the alpha man is the lead of the pack or the alpha wolf is the lead of the pack, that's where it comes from. But that's exactly the mindset that it kind of placed in men. So men go throughout assigning themselves as alpha, and so they always think they have to be in control. They have to be in charge. They got to be the leader. You can't be dependent. You always got to be the one that have it figured out. And it's just like you don't leave space for anybody to do anything of service to you because you think that you're the one that has to always make decisions. You're always the one that has to, implement plans and follow through and execute. You never allow yourself to really be dependent on anyone because you've assigned yourself this title. So I don't know, like, do you feel like you do that sometimes, or have you seen that, or and how do you feel like that plays out when it comes to dating?
I think so. I think some of the women that I've dated have wanted me to be more alpha,
Hmm.
but that's not something that I fall into naturally because when I'm in a relationship, I feel like we're a team.
Got
If
you.
I'm in a relationship, you and I are one, and we're working
In a
together.
relationship,
Yeah,
yeah,
to a
that sounds a
certain.
little marriagey.
I mean, I know how you are with your commitment issues.
Oh, call me out. Okay, let me hush.
but I feel like we're trying to build something. We're trying to build something together. So even if I'm planning, I'm gonna. If I'm not, if it, unless it's a surprise or something like that, I'm gonna take your feelings into consideration. And the only way I can really know your feelings and your expectations and your wants implicitly is by asking and considering you in the planning process. Like I might take the lead, but at the same time, I'm gonna want your input in it. And so it is times where I will take the lead, and you think about there are such thing as alpha females too.
It is, but we don't use it as much. We use independent woman more.
So when you think of a alpha woman or independent woman, uh, sometimes when you just by taking the lead, that's too much for them. And I've been in situations where they tell me that I'm bossy just because I'm trying to like put something together, and it's like how am I bossy? Like I'm trying to put this together, and I'm including you. But I also date a lot of women who will say they don't want me to plan stuff in one area, and then all of a sudden, why didn't you plan this? It's like you can't have both. Like I can't. Look, I can't. You know what I'm saying? Like
You buy it into listen, because I don't know your specific situation, so I can't speak to them. But
safety.
this narrative that we crazy and we don't know what we want is all up and through here.
I mean, I ain't saying it's all of y'all, but
Hmm.
everybody is different. And sometimes some women, some men too, don't know what they want. So
Yeah, that's true.
they will talk out too. They're not consistent. I value consistency, and a lot of times those situations be a lot of inconsistency. So yeah, so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's perfectly fine. With the alpha males, it's just like I said, like You don't leave room for nobody to show up for you. And then you walk into every room that you enter and you think automatically everything is supposed to yield to your thoughts and your way of thinking, and it's just exhausting sometimes. And a lot of times a lot of women will conflate wanting a man who leads with wanting an alpha male, which is to me is two different things.
I
Because
think
alpha male looks, well, not anymore, but alpha male, it looks good on paper, but the conversations I've had with men who consider themselves alpha males, I'm just be like, you don't, you just perform exactly the way you're supposed to perform. You don't leave space for nobody to do nothing for you, and you have control issues, and that's just how I feel about that.
and that's all fair.
Where are we? The popular or charismatic one?
Oh,
Why did you sigh?
because I'm the popular and charismatic one.
How has that played out in your dating?
So a lot of times it's great. Like, oh, they meet you, it's like, oh, you're great, you're so charismatic, and maybe you're so charming. Like, this is awesome. But then they think that like we're together or we're dating, that that all goes away. Like I'm that I'm not gonna be popular anymore because we're together. I'm not gonna be charismatic anymore because we're together. It's a difference between flirting and being charismatic.
Uh
But you know,
huh.
but it's like you're still gonna be the person that you are. And I feel like sometimes the women that I've dated will love that when they first meet me. They're like, oh, that's great. But then when they meet me and it's like I might not even do anything. I could be out and it's like people would just be fond of me and it's like women, men, whatever. And that would make them so mad the way that people react to me. And it's like I cannot control how someone reacts to me. I'm
Hmm.
with you and I'm gonna make you feel like I want you in every aspect of that word. But I can't control if anybody else wants me.
Have I dealt with this? Uh, Slightly. I mean, um, I'm someone who's pretty much confident. Once I am in a relationship with someone, I'm confident about our connection. So dating someone who is charismatic, which I usually kind of lean towards people who are more charismatic because I'm not particularly charismatic. I'm likable, but it's not the same thing.
You get
Um,
in your own way.
yeah, but when somebody's like just overall charismatic, and that's just, I mean, I know my strokes, though. Come on now, let me keep on with it. But so I've dated several people who have been, charismatic, and it's a fine experience. It's just when they start leaning to it too much,
Mhm.
where it's just like, okay, now you're being a little bit of a ladies' man.
Mm.
Now we're gonna have to have some conversations because you are making room and space for people to come and disrespect
Mm.
what's going on here. It's not so much of, you can control what someone else's do,
Yeah.
but it's what you allow as well. And if you're making space for people to, based off your personality, to be disrespectful, that's when we need to have a different conversation. And maybe you need to adjust from there, not change, but just make some adjustments, tone it down a little bit.
I mean, that's real. That's real. I definitely used to be unaware of. You got to think about it. I like for me, I grew up. I was unpopular. I didn't have any friends. You know what I mean? Like women weren't checking for me. So
Aw, baby Rick.
when I got older and like I grew up and like women actually were checking for me. I just had my personality had already been developed. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And just being like not flirtatious. And I know it's like really a difference between being flirtatious and charismatic, but I tend to notice now more a lot of women now can't tell the difference because it's so few people that are, sadly enough, I don't feel like people are polite without expectation or reason now as much
Hmm.
anymore. So if I'm polite or charismatic around women, sometimes I have to be very careful with the things that I do and I say if I'm in a relationship to make sure that they don't think that I'm trying to lead them down a path that I'm not.
Right. And that's totally fair because there is sometimes this suspicion like, what this person want? They be a little bit too friendly. They're being a little bit too nice. And sometimes it could just be that the person is charismatic, So I totally get that. And that's why I said sometimes you just have to figure out, okay, when is it appropriate to make adjustments and when it's not.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it could just be someone else's insecurity that they might be projecting on you, that not necessarily something you're doing wrong. So,
100%.
the creative slash entrepreneur
Uh-oh.
looks great on paper, but in practice, it's a lot of long nights. It's a lot of
Workaholic.
yeah, because especially if you're doing this and you have another full-time job,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is a whole nother experience. And I've even so I date a lot of creative people, which I didn't realize that until like recently.
Mm.
So I date a lot of creatives, and I've had to have the conversation about, okay, you need to be a little bit more balanced because you have a lot going on. I have a lot going on. I'm always making sure that I'm creating that space, but we need to ensure that we're making time equally for each other wherever we can. And it's a real conversation to have because being a creative entrepreneur means that you basically have another job. I mean, you got the creative aspect of it in the space you need to create, and then you have the business aspect of it because you need to promote what you created. And so it's an ongoing process on top of a lot of other life stuff that you may have going on. So, have you dated other creatives, and what was that experience like, and also with you being a creative and entrepreneur, how has that been in dating as well?
I've never dated another creative, and
What?
yeah, I wish that I had because I feel like to a certain degree that they would be more understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been women that I've dated as a creative, and it's like it's dope. Oh, you do podcasts and stuff like that, and that's awesome. And there's a prestige, and like I've even when I've still been in like the talking phase, like he working on his podcast, he doing that, and it's like that's something that they share with their girls and stuff like that, and it's all good
In
until
the
it's like
beginning.
yeah, it's all good until it's like, oh, can you do this? It's like, no, actually, I got like 5 shows that I'm recording. I'm gonna be on this show, and this show, and then I gotta edit all of that. And like, well, you seem really busy. It's like, well, it's because I am really busy. Like, I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? And of course, you take the time to make time, but depending on what level and what stage you are in that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're not as willing to carve out time where you could be productive. It's kind of like that money thing. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of like it's like, ooh, I could spend $5 on this, or I could, invest $5 into my business. Like, I think I'll just
Right.
put this on my business. So it's one of those situations where it's like, oh, that's cool that you do that, and I'm really intrigued by that. But if you're not willing to be understanding that sometimes I'm gonna be doing certain things, and even like, that's why I can never be with a woman that's jealous. Single life right now, but I can never date someone that's jealous just because I'm gonna be I work with all different types of women, and you know what I'm saying? And I'm not gonna stop working with a cohort just because you're uncomfortable with me working with a woman just because they're a woman. Like that's not gonna happen.
So you feel like that even comes into play about like how you go about creating and who you create with? That's been something that's come up in your dating?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because it's like they don't like that you work with women. Like, it's been situations where I've worked at a married couple's house, and the woman that I was with was uncomfortable with the woman. I'm like, she got a whole husband there. We all working together. She ain't
And then I mean that was
it's like that ain't even the situation. Like I'm there to try to get some money, and like she was uncomfortable, and it's kind of hard. Like you kind of at that point you kind of pick. Like, am I gonna give up this part of my creativity, my business, or am I gonna give up this person that I'm dating? And I feel like that situation, like that, the response is different each time. But that's why now that I date, if I date now, it's like, look, I work with women all the time. You know what I mean? Like you and I, Kay, we work together a lot. We
Mhm.
collaborate on a lot of things, and the people that we with just got to be comfortable with that because it's like we both gonna be respectful, of course, but we're not gonna stop working together just because we are opposite sex. You know what I'm saying? It
Right.
doesn't
Yeah, you
doesn't.
can't flirt with no more with me, Rick.
Nah, you got a whole man. Like I am not flirting at all. Not at all.
Behave.
I'm, I'm, you
I'm
said behave.
kidding.
When was the last go? Builders, go back and listen to our last episodes when she was a single woman and see how much flirting we did. Like it all stopped when she got a whole man.
That's how y'all gonna track how long I've been in the relationship.
Like y'all really want to know when you got a relationship? Listen to the episodes we've been on and be like one episode like we super flirting because she was flirting back. She came front, but
It's all part of the business now.
now it's a part of the business, y'all. I'm doing air quotes for those who just listen on audio. Air quotes. It's all a part of the business, but it's just things change. But we have a great working relationship and a great friendship, so that is
Yeah.
just something that it needs to be understood from the get go. And anybody with trust issues they're gonna pull you back because they're gonna limit the things that you can do without them feeling comfortable because they're not comfortable in themselves. Like
Right.
you're not comfortable with me. Like with me, I pour into you. Like if that ain't enough for you, then I could be in a box and you still won't be happy.
Right. And that's me on this side of it. I'm like with me being a creative and entrepreneur, I'm just like I always know that I make time no matter what. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't mean that I'm going to give up everything. It just means I'm going to have to work harder to make that time and to make sure that I'm giving at least equal parts of myself and adjusting where I need to. With that being said, the whole creative and entrepreneur part of it looks great on paper because sometimes it really is. Like, with any of this stuff, like sometimes it really is great, but um, you start off because you have that understanding. Somebody who is creative can possibly help create with you and give you ideas and give you that inspirational energy. That's always a great experience. But on the other side of that, you do sometimes get into a space where the person might not be as understanding as they were in the beginning. Or if you're both creatives, then it gets a little bit harder to juggle all the things that you have to do. So, that's something you have to consider that sometimes that's not the great aspect of it down the line. And you're going to have to work harder to kind of make it work. Um, where I'm at. The spiritual slash religious one.
Mm.
So I put this one because I do believe in astrology. I'm a newfound believer within the last year and a half or so. I'm more spiritual than I am religious. I don't practice religion as heavily as I practice spirituality, but I do believe in both. And I can see how a lot of times people will think they know you based on like things like your zodiac sign before they even get to know you. So like someone feeling like they're spiritual, looks good on paper because you're like, okay, I'm gonna have all this good positive energy around me, somebody who knows how to, be peaceful. And then possibly as the relationship and stuff goes on, instead of you listening to who I am, you keep assigning things I do and my actions and everything else to your own understanding through your spiritual beliefs and things of that nature. So have you experienced that or seen that in your own dating?
Yeah, I've seen that. So I'm more spiritual, religious, you know, and dating others religious people, depending on where they're at, it could always mean a different thing. People be
Mm-hmm.
cool with like being religious until you be like, yo, I'm abstinent, and like, oh, what does that mean? It's all good until you just throw out like you abstinent on there, and that kind of changes the conversation sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
the I think with anything, it still has to be balanced. So I'm a religious person, but I am a human being. So there's things that I enjoy as a person. I never want to be with. I feel like the reoccurring thing with this is kind of like balance. Balance. It always has to be some type of balance. I don't want someone that's so religious that that's the only language that they speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like they need to be able to do different things and be able to, even if they're into like astrology or whatever it is, even though I'm not really into it. But it's a story that I told on Coffee with Kendra, both of our one of our friends, that like I didn't believe in any of that stuff until I was telling a friend about this woman I had dated, and they called out her sign, and they was like, she must be this. And I'm like, oh crap,
Mm-hmm.
like
It's
why?
very much some truth behind it.
And I was like, whoa, Jack. I was like, maybe, maybe I shouldn't date them anymore. But
Maybe.
but I just think too many times in society we end up assigning characteristics of people based on what they are into. So whether it's
Mhm.
religion or astrology or whatever it is, we base whole characteristics around that.
Mhm.
And I just try to make sure that I learn people for people.
Right. So the religious part, at a glance, it looks great, right? He
Mhm.
believes in God.
Yeah.
That's all it, you know what I'm saying? But then when you start looking at how he might practice that religion, it's just like, okay, now you're really steeped into like the deep religion where those gender roles, they don't have no breathing room. So you want me to fit in this mold that's been there for centuries that I can't fit in that. It would be too much for me. So even on that aspect. And then I also dated or dealt with, a couple of guys who have been dabbling in their, spirituality,
Mhm.
and they'll be like, "Oh, damn, you an Aquarius? I don't know about that." I'm like, "Well, damn, can we get to know each other first? Like, and what does that even mean?" And so like it's also that it's like, whether you're expecting someone to show up in a particular way based on that, or you're going to discount someone because of it too. That's where sometimes it doesn't look so great in practice. um the communicator.
You're a communicator.
I'm
Uh,
a good communicator, 'cause practice at being a good communicator, and I can acknowledge when I'm not good at communication. And I think
sometimes
most of the time, because I self reflect, so
I,
I might not catch it in the moment.
I was gonna say sometimes you might communicate too much, but
Sometimes. Um, but that self reflection is where you can kind of catch that and, go back and adjust and, be better next
I was
time.
talking about Kantoinette specifically. But
I was talking about me too, first of all. Anyway, a lot of people like to lead with, "Yeah, I love to have like real conversations. Yeah, I need somebody who's a good communicator because I like, to do that." In On paper and in theory, it's all great. But my saying is everybody's a communicator until it's time to communicate. And then that's really you really get into the bones of whether somebody is good at it or not. And a lot of people just not good at it.
very true.
Um what's been your experience with that?
So I feel like anyone that I've talked to said they are a good communicator typically tend not to be.
Mhm.
So kind of just what you said. And the thing is being someone who is a good communicator. I have been in situations where they thought that just because I was a good communicator, that every single situation I was supposed to perfectly be able to articulate every single thing perfectly in a way that
Mhm.
they understand, even though we speak in two different mannerisms, and I'm supposed to be able to adjust to exactly deliver the thing that they want. It's like,
No.
no, like,
I'm not
like
perfect.
no, not at all. And the thing is with this particular situation is we spoke so differently and we
Mhm.
communicated so differently. So it's like I know how to communicate to 90% of people. You that 10% of people that I have a hard time, but I'm working on it. And it's not always easy. So I feel like sometimes being labeled a good communicator as a person being a good communicator, that can be dangerous too because people think that you just be able to communicate everything perfectly every time.
Yeah.
You just
I agree with that 100%. It's that expectation and that weight on your shoulders. It's like, dang, I'm not perfect. I'm gonna mess up sometimes. Sometimes I'm not gonna get it in the moment. Like, and you could be right, in whatever exchange you might be having with the person. They could be right. And the fact that you don't get it in that moment, you go back and you self reflect, and you can come back and be like, you know what, you were right, I was wrong.
yeah,
That's even a hit against you. But it's just like, no, that's still healthy communication because you're not gonna get it right 100% of the time.
because
But
good communication is not always instant either.
it's not. And so a lot of people, they put those expectations on you, especially when you have a platform like you know, you're a podcaster or something like that, and you are talking about issues all the time and deep issues, people place those expectations to think that, oh, this is the person that is going to be good at communicating all the time. It's just
Yeah.
not true. Um, the next one is the caregiver. Yeah, you know. Um, for me, I would say the caregiver would be a lot of times guys get placed as like the provider, the caregiver, and everything in their families and stuff, and they don't have any boundaries. So it looks good on paper because this person is empathetic, they care, they're a provider, you know, they're someone that I can see myself being with.
Mhm.
But in practice, you don't even get a chance to actually enjoy being with them because they're getting pulled in so many different directions because they have no boundaries. So they're always helping their family, they're always helping their friends. They're never putting themselves first. They're always burnt out because they don't pour back into themselves. And then
Talking about me.
I'm just talking. If you get hit with some words, I don't know. And my personal experience with some of this has been like you step in and you start doing the self care for the person, right? Because you want to take care of the person. And then they get attached to you doing that instead of them being able to do it themselves. So now both of y'all burned out.
Yeah.
So,
Valid. I've seen the other side of that to where you have someone that's a caretaker and maybe they aren't distracted. Maybe they're trying to caretake for you. And sometimes that leads to them trying to take care of you in areas where you don't need to be taken care of. Some
mm,
areas you want to take care of yourself, but they're so busy trying to take care of you that they're not giving you the opportunity to do some of the things that you enjoy doing or that you feel like you need to do, and then that can cause friction in that situation because it's like it'll start to feel like they're just constantly trying to hold your hand.
I've been that caretaker before.
And especially as a man, it's a thing that's intrinsic with us that it's times where we need to do certain things in order to feel, for lack of a better term, manly. And you know that's whether or not you agree with traditional gender roles or not. You know, I feel like a lot of things are starting to change, but sometimes you just want to feel like you are, like I always wanted to feel like I'm equipped to do the things that I need to do for myself, whether I'm
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship or not. Like I don't want to always depend on the woman I'm with to cook all the time. I want to be able to take care of that sometimes. Like I'll never depend on a woman to like wash my clothes or something like that. Everything, like I'll appreciate it, but it's like I always don't need it done all the time.
Right.
So don't mother me. I have a mother.
Right.
And sometimes
Um.
I feel like caretakers tend to try to take that parental role, and then that feels less of a like an eros relationship, and then it becomes more of like, are you trying to replace my mom? Like, what are you doing? I don't need a
Mhm.
mom. I need a mate.
Right. Okay, you slapping me over here, right? You ain't gotta do all that. I've been that caretaker before, and I had to acknowledge that in myself, where it's just like you got to give people space to do their own self care. You got
Mm.
to give people space to adult. you know, you want to swoop in, and you want to always be the one that makes someone life easier, but a lot of times you're being an enabler. Um, Taking on things that are not your responsibility to take on. And I had to hold myself accountable for that. In the reverse, I see a lot of men do that too. They'll fill that father role. Um,
I've been
you
guilty
know,
of this full transparency. I definitely have.
yeah. You'll do everything. Like, you'll take care of all the major stuff. The woman in your care is being baby to a point where she doesn't have to worry about anything,
Yeah.
which doesn't speak for her own strength, you know what I'm saying? Doesn't give her agency because she is more than capable of doing a lot of stuff. I have to tell, um, guys, a lot of times, like, sometimes I don't need you to open my door. I don't mind you being chivalrous, but I'm not going to wait for you to do it. It's not a big deal for me.
You know what I would say? I don't
What's
care.
the,
I'm still gonna open your door. Now what?
and now you're taking my choice away from me. So what's more important? You know what I'm saying? Um,
Now you making it difficult now.
you know what I'm saying? It's just even small stuff like that, but that's what I mean because those it's like more so of a control thing, which I had to realize it was the same with me too. So I totally agree whether you're taking on that parental role or it's just like you're not even giving the person a chance to care for themselves because you always right there.
You don't give them a chance to grow and to be what they need to be in order to take care of themselves.
Or even to rise to the occasion to do the same for you. Because if
Yeah,
they can't do it for themselves, how they gonna do it for you?
that's valid. Woo.
Yeah. Um, last two. 'Cause we've been talking for a minute. Um, fatherhood, motherhood. This might hit some people. um,
That's a good on paper.
good on paper, because a lot of men will get points if they have one kid. A lot of women will look at that and they'll be like, "Oh my god, he takes care of his," especially if it's a little girl. He take
Oh,
care of his daughter. He always with her. And it looks great on paper, but in practice, that also means that that daughter don't go away. You know, he's gonna be able to. He's gonna have to spend time, give this, this child attention and stuff. And there's certain things that he might not be able to do in the relationship because of that. And I can say that from looking into other experience. I don't think I've ever really dated since my younger years. I've never dated seriously a man with kids. So
hmm.
have you dated a woman with kids, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, I've dated, I think a couple women with kids. But the thing to understand when doing that for most guys, that having kids is gonna probably more than likely be a detractor for us. Because the main thing that you want to first that you have to understand as a man is that whenever you're dating a woman with kids, you will not be number one. Period. And if
Hmm.
you're not mature enough to be able to deal with that, then you're not mature enough to be in a relationship with a single mom.
It's weird though. I mean, when it comes to men, women will look at a man with like one or two kids, and they'll assume that he's more mature.
But I mean, in typical society, chances are the one of the big factors I feel like is that the kids usually generally stay with the mom most of the time.
Of course, of course.
So that means that when a man is dating and he has kids, chances are he's still flexible to do what he needs to do. Like if you
Hmm.
see me, you're gonna be able to see me because I like my baby with baby mama. But I don't have any kids. But that's typically like people that I've known who have kids has been like that. They can still move the way they want to do
Oh
because
yeah, especially men.
yeah,
Yeah.
they can move the way they want to move. I think we did an episode, the single mothers episode, and we had two single moms on our show, Relationship Talks with Rick and Namon. And I feel like they did a really good job of talking about some of the things that they have to go through. I didn't even think about getting Danny. Like I could have got Danny on it too, but they did a really good job of talking about some of the things that they have to go through as dating. You know what I mean? Not just they're more than moms and
Hmm.
all of that. So it's a maturity that comes with being able to date a woman with children because chances are that that woman is going to have her children all the time.
But see, I think that's the default mindset, and I think that's where it works against us. So more than likely, that's the case.
Yeah,
But there are a lot of cases where, because based on that fatherhood, that motherhood, you think that the person is mature enough for a relationship, and they're not. So at glance, you're just like, oh, this person takes care of their kids. The kids always, look like somebody care about them. They don't look crazy whenever they post pictures and stuff. But then when you start actually being in a different connection with the person, you'll realize, oh wait, you know, she might not be really taking care of kids as well as she should. Or even with guys, you'll be like, yo, when the last time you spent time with your kids? I ain't heard you say nothing in a minute. And then the one time out of 2 months he actually spent time with his kids, he posted on Instagram. And so now you thinking, what I'm saying, you've got that first impression from when he was doing that, but now you got a little bit more insight that, okay, this person just be flexing. They don't really be contributing anything to these kids' lives.
I think this is one that's different for genders. Like one, I feel like it seems like it is good on paper on one side and it's bad on paper on the other side. And I feel like it can go like that's one of the ones that can go either way. But I definitely do feel it's a difference. It depends on who's writing that piece of paper down.
Right. So last one is the passionate one, or the one that follows their heart. And the builder that gave this to me, shout out to Professor T. She said that a lot of times we are encouraged to follow our heart when it comes to dating.
Hmm.
And that sounds great when someone says they lead with their heart. but the logic is so important there because sometimes you're not supposed to lead with your heart. Sometimes you need to use your logic, and a lot of people don't do that. So, what has been your experience with that? Someone who has this missed logic for how they feel, um, in your dating life.
I feel like that's been me at
Yeah,
times.
it's been me plenty of times.
I've definitely led with my heart, and I think the thing that tends to happen is you tend to overlook things that you shouldn't,
Hmm.
and you end up staying in things that you shouldn't.
Hmm.
And but on the other side, like hearing something like that, it kind of makes me think of a free spirit.
Hmm.
And if you're always leading with your emotions, there's going to be times in a relationship, the longer it goes, there's going to be times where that stuff wanes. It waxes and wanes. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I would never want to be with anybody who leads with their heart in such a way that they're passionate about me one minute, we're not passionate about each other another minute, but they're so passionate about life in general, and they become passionate about somebody else, and they leave me because they find a new passion. You know what I
I've
mean?
been that person.
See, dang, you shady.
I am a passionate person, and I am passionate about so many different things. It really doesn't take a lot for me when it comes to passion.
Yeah,
Um, that's why, because I say I can be intense. Sometimes I have to tell people that up front. I'm just like, once I'm in it, I'm in it. Like, you, especially when I'm talking about dating, you now become a new passion for me.
yeah,
So I've been that person that always leads with that feeling and not so much using my heart, but by getting burned so many times, I learned to use that logic now and have those conversations with myself, which is kind of what LBF was born out of too, because it was just like, girl, you need to talk. You need to figure some stuff out so we don't keep making the same decisions. And it's okay for you to tap into that spirit of yours that wants to be led by these emotions because you can get in your head so much that you don't follow your emotions,
that's
which is
true.
not good either. So, as we've said up and through this, balance is really the key to like having healthy, a healthy connection with anything. So yeah, that's just me in it. As far as men and how that has shown up,
Hmm.
um,
It sounds dangerous.
I've it's yeah, it works the same way. It's just like I had a guy. Well, I had one of my exes, and I told him I was like, he wasn't someone who wasn't passionate. Who was passionate, but he was passionate about me.
Hmm.
And then when he lost that passion for me, I felt it. I'm just like, God, you ain't, what's going on now? Like, you ain't got nothing going on. You're not passionate about me no more, and I don't mean that in just a sexual sense, but you can feel when someone is passionate for you. Um,
That's true.
mm,
I've definitely heard the inverse of that. I've definitely heard women say, I don't flip a switch, but they be like, it's like you flipped the switch. Like 1 minute you was there, and then the next minute,
you out.
it's it's kind of that thing. It's like if I'm arguing with you, like if we having our ups and downs and we arguing and we having a conversation about it, you good. If I don't, if you say something, I'll be like, okay, that's a wrap.
You know what? I like this conversation because I mean it really makes you think about like dating and how those first impressions really determine how you move and progress, with someone. And
Yeah,
if you are really like somebody who is impressed by some of this stuff, and if you have those experiences where it's just like, wait a minute, this isn't as good as it looked.
not at all. I mean,
So,
but I feel like having a passionate woman is like someone like that, someone like you, a woman like you who takes that passion for the person that they're with. It's kind of like one of those things. They be like, yeah, we want it, we want it, we want it, until we get it. And
mhm.
it's like, ooh, this is a lot. Like I don't know if I want it or not.
And sometimes it's not that you don't want it; it's that you don't know how to receive it.
You're
Because I
not
had to realize that too. It's just like if you want someone who's the opposite of you, who's more open, who's passionate, who's this, who's that. But if you're not somebody who's used to being vulnerable, you're not used to being open, you're not used to being passionate. How are you going to receive this person?
exactly.
um, but yeah, that's all I have for this.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. I didn't realize it was going to be a lot.
You realize?
We both over here on fumes.
What it is that Kantoinette and I don't have the opportunity to talk as much as we usually do. So she missed me so much that we just had to keep
That's exactly what it was,
what
Rick.
it was. See, I knew it.
Go ahead and plug the podcast because I still want them to run your numbers up because you still
Yeah.
got amazing episodes.
Oh, look, it is so here. If you've never heard of it before, the podcast is Relationship Talks with Rick and Namon, and it's two African American men, me and my cousin, and we're talking honestly, sometimes funny, but always honest about relationships. The very first episode is a episode where I'm talking about me getting ghosted by this girl that I had dated, and we went on this lovely date. We went to see a movie in the park, and we're on a blanket.
That date was so perfect, and she ghosted you.
Just like didn't talk to me no more after that. But everything works out the way it should. But yeah, so please go check that out. It was really good content there. A lot of it, K Antoinette, like I said, has been on several different episodes with us. So that'll be there. If you want to know more about me, I am working on a different podcast. And I know that you just had an episode recently about colorism, right?
I did. It was a great conversation. I haven't. Well, shit. Once they listen to this, it'll be out. So that was released probably last week. Once y'all listen to this, but yeah, me and Neat Cruz of the Relationship Status Podcast, we definitely dove into that topic, and I didn't hold back. She didn't hold back. It was a great conversation. So check it out.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm actually working on now is a podcast that's dealing with things from a black perspective because for me, I feel like perspective runs a lot of things, whether it's relationships and dating or just general life. Sometimes we don't understand what we don't understand. Like the example that I give is that a white person won't understand the fear that is intrinsically there when a black person gets pulled over by the police, even if they haven't done anything, probably especially if they haven't done anything. Just like a man might not understand the fear that a woman might have going somewhere by themselves and going to their car at night. It's
Mhm.
things that we as human beings that have different perspectives carry on a daily basis, and we don't understand the perspective of the other person. So sometimes we could take it for granted and say something that's inconsiderate because we don't understand where they're coming from with that. So I'm hoping that that should be coming out in the next couple of months. But if you're looking for me, you can find me at Doddism, and that's DODDSISM.
All right, that's on Instagram. Let them know. You just
That's on
go drop
Instagram,
it.
Twitter, the Clubhouse, Facebook.
Oh, excuse me. On most of the streaming platforms, it
Most
is
most
on
of most of the
social
yeah, it's I know you're tired. It's fine.
social platform. And you guys know me. I'm your host, K Antoinette, and you can follow me on Instagram at K Antoinette underscore the blogger. You can also follow the Let's Build Futures page at Let's underscore build underscore futures. If y'all don't follow me by now, and I say this every episode, please go follow. And you can also hit me up on Gmail at all things Gmail. Wait, all
Uh,
things LBF at gmail.com. Y'all, I'm sorry.
she
This is going to be a two-part. So by the time you listen to this will be the second half of Dating 101 Rules. But yeah, thank you. And I hope to talk to y'all again soon. Bye.
This